Wonderful. Thanks, Ellie, and welcome along, everyone, to today's session just about what assessment support we have available and sort of how we can think about using them. Delivering the session today here, we've got myself, so I'm the Head of Assessment Strategy in our General Qualifications Division. I did a lot with our customer support pieces, and I'm sure there will be people on this call that I've spoken with as well over the course of the past couple of years. And we've also got Emma Howlett, who is our Head of Content within General Qualifications. She leads a brilliant team that create the assessments with our senior examiners as well. So she's very well placed to talk to us today about some of these assessment materials. And also in the background, you might not see him till the end of the session, but we've also got Connor Pritchett, who is our Assessment Customer First Manager as well. And he will be on the chat this afternoon, answering any questions that you may have. So I would ask, if you have got questions, we'll be hopefully covering them throughout the session today. But if you do have them, please put them into the question and answer section, and we'll try to get us through as many as possible today. This session is also, as Ellie said at the top of the session, is being recorded. The recordings will be available shortly, in sort of the coming days, available on our Professional Development Academy online as well. So there are some other sessions that have been recorded that are being uploaded. The Centre Policy and Quality Assurance process, grading, and then what information we have got for appeals, as well as some of our live subject sessions as well. So there are a few other live sessions going on at the moment. So going through this session today, we want to give just a quick general overview of the summer 2021 assessment window, and then we'll dive into a bit more of the detail about what assessment support is available, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end for the Q&A section. We have got, I think, roughly around 25 to 30 pre-submitted questions, so we will get through as many of those as possible, hopefully answer all of those, and then we'll be able to dive in and just answer some of the questions that are coming in as well. So without further ado, I'll just take us on and just give us a bit of a general overview of the series again. If you have attended other sessions, you may well have heard this already, but we just want to make sure that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. So this year, students will receive grades that are awarded and determined by teachers. And they are to be assessed only on what they have been taught. From last year, where it was what might they achieve in an exam, it is evidence-based in 2021, and it is about what they have been taught. That is just to account for the differential loss in teaching time that has happened globally. So we just want to make sure that whatever impact has happened on those learners, that they can be assessed on what they've been taught. There is no algorithm to be used this year, no rank ordering, none of that will be required, and teachers will be able to draw on a range of evidence when determining the grades. So there's the optional use of questions that have been provided by us here at Pearson, as well as other awarding organisations. It could be mock exams, it could be coursework, or other non-examined assessments. So that could be practicals in the form for drama or PE where safe to do so, and then any other work that is completed as part of a pupil's course, such as essays or in-class assessments as well. We are providing guidance for teachers on our website, and Emma is going to give plenty of detail about that later in the session, but hopefully you've started to interact with some of that support, and that's how you've arrived at today's session with us as well. And teachers will need to submit those grades to exam boards by the 18th of June, and results days for GCSE and A-level are slightly different to a normal exam series. They will take place in the same week on the 10th and 12th of August, with the GCE Level 3 qualifications results day on the 10th, and the Level 2 GCSE on the 12th as well. Just a few of the kind of the key timelines. I won't go through all of them. There is a detailed full timeline on our Pearson qualification website as well for both UK and international centres. But I think just some of the key ones to pull out, particularly the 30th of April is the deadline for the quality assurance policy submission. So that's your centre policies, as a lot of them have been called. They need to be submitted via the centre admin portal, which can be accessed via Edexcel online. I think it's probably just worth saying as well, if you are a centre that offers both the UK and the international qualifications, you do only need to submit the one policy, but the one policy does need to tell us any differences or what you are doing for those approaches. We do recognise that for our international qualifications, there is a slightly different approach with some unseen assessment materials being available, but just the one policy needs to be submitted to us. And then, as I sort of mentioned on the last slide as well, the teacher assessed grades need to be submitted by the 18th of June, but that window is open from the 26th of May, and that is again via the respective portals for the relevant awarding organisations. So our hours will be through Edexcel online. And then just on the right-hand side is a screenshot of where the timelines can be found on our website as well. And just before we get to Emma's helpful information as well, just really wanted to signpost again the real key documents for working through deriving grades this summer for learners, and they are the JCQ and the Pearson guidance on determining grades. They should be your first port of call for anything to do with determining grades this summer. So on Friday the 26th of March, the Joint Council for Qualifications, the JCQ, released their guidance on determining grades. If you are delivering UK qualifications, that is the document that you need to be very familiar with as you determine grades. And then on the 1st of April, we released our Pearson guidance on determining grades for international qualifications. It is very similar to the JCQ guidance for UK qualifications, but it does just allow for those differences where our international qualifications are offering a slightly different route to deriving grades this summer. Make sure, if you haven't already done so, that you have been on the JCQ website and you have downloaded the editable centre policy, you have got the assessment record sheet, that you've got the head of department checklist, and also, very importantly, that you've got the grade descriptors. All of those links are vital to go through. You can access the JCQ website through our website as well, if you needed to. And we've also shared a link on our website that just provides a top 10 important things to note from the JCQ guidance as well that we think are worth knowing. And then also just some of our high level support that is available from us here at Pearson. Do keep up to date with our regular qualifications bulletins. The 8th edition of that is being sent tomorrow, and it has got some new information in it. Please do make sure that you're signed up for that. You can sign up for it on our website, just on the right-hand side of the page. And we've also got our fortnightly exams officers bulletins that do go out, and they give the latest information, or they will give the updates again that have come from the qualifications bulletin. But please do make sure you're signed up for them. And then we've got our summer 2021 main support landing page that will take you out to the relevant places that you need to be for perhaps some subject-specific support, or it will take you through to our Pearson Professional Development Academy, where there are specific support sessions that are available for some of the wider, more general pieces of support about grading. This video from this session will be available through there as well. And then, as I said, some of the subject pages that Emma it will, I'm sure, mention as we work through the rest of the session. So that is just a quick whistle-stop tour from me. I will jump into the Q&A section and answer what I can. I think it's probably just worth pointing out that this is a general qualifications training session. It's not for BTEC as well. I think I can see that that is a question that has come through. So just to call that out, this is for general qualifications, GCSEs and A-levels. So Emma, I will pass over to you.
Thank you, David. Good evening all. As David said, I'm Emma Howlett. I'm Head of General Qualifications for Content Production here at Pearson. So I'm just going to take you through what support materials we have available. So I think your first port of call really for all of your subject assessment support is the subject overview document that we've created, and we've produced these subject overview documents, and they kind of collate a number of resources for to support teachers this summer. Each subject has its own overview document, which then links out to all of the pertinent information for your subject area. They look similar to what's on the screen here. Obviously that's just a maths one, but they all have got a similar look and feel. So to navigate to these, to find these on the website, you'll need to go to the Pearson website and find your subject page. If you then go to course material and teaching and learning material, and from there you'll see a tab that says Summer 21 assessment materials for centres, and then at that point you're kind of presented with numerous pieces of information, but the first document on there is this overview document. So we hope that that kind of is the most helpful piece of information that you'll need to be able to then navigate out to all of those different areas. Okay. So as I kind of will go through, I think it's probably just worth saying that these overview documents, they kind of cover things like key dates, the links to the additional assessment materials, grade descriptors, grading exemplification. So first of all, what I just thought I'd do is, David's kind of mentioned key dates. I thought I'd just take you through just kind of the additional assessment materials. So for each subject, we've released organised additional assessment material, which is made up of sets of questions, mapping grids and mark schemes. And I'm sure you're all aware, but these are optional for teachers and could be used in a few different ways. So, for example, you might decide to set these materials as a test or as a class or a homework activity. The materials can be used to give students the opportunity to show what they know, understand, or can do in an area of content that has been taught but you haven't yet assessed yet. Give students an opportunity to show improvement, for example, to validate or replace a piece of existing evidence, or to support with the kind of consistency of judgment between teachers or classes within a centre by giving students the same task to complete where appropriate. So next that comes along with the additional assessment materials are what we're calling the mapping grids. And each subject has a mapping grid which lists out the past questions within a defined period. And we kind of expect that you would use these to identify questions that assess a particular skill or content area that you might want to assess your students on. And it's probably worth noting here that these can be used in conjunction with Exam Wizard to compile a topic test or to identify additional assessment materials that you may want to use. So moving on to support materials, so things like past papers, mark schemes and examiner reports. So the overarching or the overview document will link out to all past papers, mark schemes and examiner reports for that subject. It's probably worth noting that, because we've had quite a few questions on this, but the assessments from June 2019 and autumn 2020 remain under padlock. So the materials that were already publicly available still are, but we've kept those June 2019 and autumn 2020 under padlock for now. And I'm sure that you're all already aware, but the examiner reports provide detailed feedback on how students typically responded to questions and performed overall in past assessments. So moving on to grade descriptors. So you'll see under the summer 21 assessment materials for centres, the grade descriptors. They are the same grade descriptors that have been produced through the JCQ and that are available on the GCQ. We've taken those and put them into a single document so that you can refer to them, you know, using our website. So grade descriptors are general statements that give a high-level reflection of student performance characteristics, and they're based on the assessment objectives for the relevant specification. These are to help you in reaching judgments about student performance for summer 21. These descriptors give an indication of the secure performance at a midpoint of each grade. I think it's important to remember that the grade descriptors must be used to make a holistic judgment about student performance and will help to identify the range of evidence for a student and how it aligns with the expected performance standards. Okay, something else that's also linked through the overview document is the grade exemplification. So grades have been exemplified using student responses from historical examination scripts to illustrate the secure performance at the midpoint for each grade. And the exemplification gives you examples of the standard you will use to make grading judgments. Thought it might be helpful just to remind created. So grade descriptors have been created for GCSE, AS and A-level. For A-level, the grade descriptors exist for grades A, D, E. Performance at grades A, B, borderline are also included. For AS, grade descriptors exist for grades A, C and E only. And GCSE grade descriptors have also been created at grades 8, 6, 5, 4 and 2. And the off-roll grade descriptors for 8, 5 and 2 had been used as our starting point. And the characteristics of performance at each grade, 4 and grade 3 borderline, are also included here. It's also worth mentioning that as part of the overview document, we've also linked to what's available in terms of modified papers. In most cases, the information around modifieds is included in the mapping grids, but for some subjects, I think maths and for English, we've done separate documents because of the way that we've created those mapping grids, but it gives you the same information, so it'll let you know what modified papers have been created over the years for what's series, so if it might be June 2018 or June 2019, but it lets you know what's already there and what you can then download yourself and print it as you might need to. I think it's probably worth just highlighting here what the link is to get that information from the modified paper portal on the Pearson website, because a lot of it is self-service. One thing that we have done is to say that if centres need support with modifieds, that they can contact us directly, so that option is there too. And that just then brings me on to just a kind of an overview at the very back of the overview document that lists out what existing support is already there. So, for instance, staying on the theme of maths, it shows a link to the Maths Emporium, what you might expect there. David mentioned at the start the Pearson Development Academy, it links to that. also links to the JCQ documents that have been created as part of this process. So I hope you find that useful, and that document becomes your best friend as part of this process. One thing just to note is that since the 31st of March, we've done some iterations of that document, and the one that is now showing for the UK qualifications is the final document. So if you've downloaded one in the past, please do revisit the page where you first got that document from, because we have updated it as of the 19th of April. So that will all be there with everything that you should need now as part of this process. And for international, they will be available as well. As of the 4th of May, you'll see that you'll have your the overview document, as well as the other bits and pieces of support that will be coming. I think that's it from me. David, over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Emma. Some really helpful information, and hopefully just being able to visualise where some of those things are and sort of what they look like is helpful. A couple of other useful links that are available through the slides here are just the links to the grade descriptors for GCSE and for AS and A levels there as well. And as Emma mentioned, there is still more to come on some of our international specifications, but we have released some new information today as well, which is earlier than we were hoping for. Also to support our international customers. So this is the point where we've got 35 minutes left. As I said, we've got about 25 questions that have been pre-submitted, and we want to make sure that we get through all of them. But we have also been going through and answering the Q&A in there as well to the individual questions. So we will pull out any sort of themes or common questions that we're seeing that are coming through on there as well. So Connor, please do jump in if there are things that are popping up, but I'm going to dive into the pre-submitted questions first. And I think Emma and I are going to alternate at this point so that you hear a variety of voices as well, and it's not the same one for 25, because that can be quite tough. So the first question is that lots of our students have memorised the past paper questions, and in our first round of assessments, they were obtaining high scores. Why should we be using these assessment materials? I think, we do recognise that as soon as any exam is sat, those questions and assessments are then in the public domain. But I think it's really important to stress that these materials are optional. They are there to be designed as a support mechanisms for schools. They are not mandatory to have to be used. But we do think that these questions, are of real high and good quality. They've been created by senior examiners that have followed quite strict quality assurance processes. And as you will see, and as you have seen from some of the things presented today, there's previous examiner reports, there's exemplification that goes with these questions as well. And all of that is designed to support with marking and grading. So I think we understand that the materials, as soon as they're in the public domain, could be accessed by students. I think all boards have made their materials available publicly as well for students, but mark schemes are still held under the padlock as well. So what we would hope that they are helpful materials, but they are optional for centres to be able to use.
Thanks, David. Shall I take the next question? So the next question is, can we include active learn topic tests as part of the materials this summer? So I think the answer to that is the use of any materials set by the board or set by other sources is acceptable, providing that the assessments match the content and skills being assessed within the Pearson's qualifications. And I think you probably need to remember that the evidence you collect has to be matched to the grade you're awarding to the student. So please ensure that that is reflected on the grade descriptors. Active learn assessments can be used. There's also, as I said, there's a functionality within Exam Wizard where you can create your own topic tests as well. So as long as they are matching the content and the skills, then that would be suitable to use.
Wonderful. Thanks, Emma. Next question is, if we use grade boundaries from past papers, would this satisfy the grading descriptors? So just delving a little bit more into it, grade boundaries are an incredibly helpful tool to be able to support grading and decisions. But it is one tool that can be used this year towards deriving the learners' grades. I think when you're using grade boundaries, if you're using them for full past papers, you need to make sure that you are using them in conjunction with grading descriptors from JCQ, also from exemplification materials from awarding organisations that relate to the individual specifications. And all of that is then to be used as part of the holistic basket of evidence for an individual learner. So grade boundaries are a really helpful tool, but they should be used as part of the basket of evidence. We know with grade boundaries, when we set them, we go through a very rigorous awarding procedure. There's lots of detailed analysis. There's lots of detailed script inspection that goes into arriving at those grade boundaries. And that is for that individual paper in that individual series. So when, if you are using perhaps smaller topic tests or just parts of past papers, I'd approach with caution the grade boundaries that you may be using. But yes, they could be used as part of the basket evidence. Over to you, Emma.
Thanks, David. So the next question I've got is around international qualifications. And for those that are delivering international quals, you will know that there's going to be mapping grids similar to what we've done in the UK, available for international centres. And the question is, why are they not being released until the 4th of May when the centre policy is due in on the 30th of April? How will teachers know if they want to use them if they haven't yet seen them? So I think I should probably just say that the mapping grids will reflect all past paper content, and they're definitely for international, they're designed to help you construct assessments should you wish to use them. And you will not need to include the use of the mapping grid in your centre policy. Back to you, David.
Thank you very much. Are the grade descriptors for IGCSE or international GCSE, sorry, the same as the ones for DCSE? So we've used the UK grade descriptors as the starting point for the international grade descriptors. However, they've been extensively reviewed by our senior examiners to make sure that they reflect individual characteristics of the international qualification and that specification. So they will be similar. They may look and feel similar, but they will also be different, and they will reflect for the international GCSE. And as we've said a couple of times on this call today, they have been released today, a bit earlier than we were expecting, which is always good. But yes, they are slightly different, but they are available now. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, David. So the next question I've got is around past paper content and how, in many cases, centres have already worked through all of the past papers for the specification. So I think really the key point to this is that there's a range of evidence that can be used to determine your grades this year, and that includes the optional use of the questions that have been provided by the exam boards, mock exams, coursework, and any other work that's been used as part of the kind of the student's course, such as essays or in-class tests. So if you've already used the majority of the content and you have evidence for your candidate, there is no requirement to use the materials that have been provided by us if you're already secure and have the evidence for that candidate's grade. Back to you, David.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm trying really to do the questions on the side as well, and grabbing in between. So the next one is just about the grade descriptors having multiple strands. And on looking at the exemplar material released on the 16th of April, it appears that the higher grades need to hit them all. However, the November A-level maths A-star boundary was 71%. It seemed like it would be harder to give higher grades. I think this is a really good question, and it's really pleasing as well to hear that you've looked at the grade descriptors and the exemplar material as well. I think that's absolutely the right approach. But the standard that we're asking schools to consider is pre-2020. So all the exemplification materials have been derived using assessment materials from 2019. And I think it's also really important to stress that the approach this year being adopted by awarding organisations is not designed to be harder or easier to achieve grades in this series when compared to others. So I think grade boundaries do fluctuate from series to series. And as I said earlier, there's lots of information that goes into determining grade boundaries. But I think the approach this year is that some learners won't have covered some parts of the specification. They may not have been taught it because of the pandemic. And therefore, there are allowances designed into the system that where candidates haven't learnt it all, it doesn't mean that they should be penalised from getting the grade that their evidence reflects. So it doesn't stop them from achieving higher grades. If their evidence is there for those higher grades and it maps to the grade descriptors, it fits with the exemplar material, perhaps any previous assessments that you might have for a candidate, if it all points towards an A star or an A or an 8 or a 9, then those higher grades can still be given, but it is evidence based as well. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you. So my question, also a good one. How should I design a paper to take into account ramping and grade targeting? So I would suggest, given the kind of support materials that we have available, that you would use the mapping grids and the item level performance data. So that's data kind of individual question performance that's also available, which should support you in creating assessments if you wish to do so. I didn't touch on it in my slides, but I think, David, we were going to put a link to the attainment data, little kind of overarching document that's been done for that, just to direct people to where you can get kind of individual item performance data and get it from Results Plus, but there's also a number of other sources that you might find that's suitable and helpful for this process. So David, maybe we could pop that in the chat somewhere at some point if that's possible. But we understand that this might not be suitable for every subject or for every centre. So as you may choose to use the assessments in a different way. So Exam Wizard would also be a good tool to help with this as well. Back to you, David.
Thank you. And I'm just going to, there's one theme that I'm seeing coming through some of our questions coming in, and it's just around Exam Wizard that you've mentioned there, and perhaps Active Learn and some of the topic tests that do exist and are available, and could they be used as part of the basket of evidence? In short, yes, there is nothing to stop those resources being used as part of the basket of evidence. I think it just depends on your centre policy, how you are using them, whether you are, assessing one particular topic area or you're looking for evidence of one particular assessment objective. It really depends on your individual centre and setting, but there are tools there. Exam Wizard is one of them. Active Learn assessments are also there, so they can be included as part of a basket of evidence if they demonstrate the evidence for a learner in sort of a robust manner as well. So I've gone off a little bit on that one. The next one was just about asking, what should I do with the grade descriptors that have been supplied? So the grade descriptors are there to support with your grading decisions. They could be used at any point throughout the process. It will depend on the approach that you've taken in your centre that's been outlined in the centre policy. So I think we have heard from some centres that are using them as part of internal and external moderation of learners more towards the end of the process. So teachers deriving the grades, they are then moderating internally, and then perhaps they working with another local school. That is just one of the approaches we've heard. Others are using them as reference points as they work through existing evidence and supporting it with decision making, perhaps realising where they're missing pieces of evidence as well. They're being used in that way. So they are there as a support mechanism, but it's up to you as to what part of the process you want to use them as you derive at the grades. But they absolutely need to be interacted with, and please make sure that you have looked at the grade descriptors before submitting grades or by the 18th of June. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, David. So, next question that I have is, how would we create our own grade boundaries for optional topic tests? So this is not something that we would advocate, as grade boundaries and the awarding process are based on quite a complex process, and a lot of detailed analysis goes into it. What we would suggest you do is to compare against previous grade boundaries using the grading exemplification and the descriptors that we're providing as part of this process when deriving grades for your students. Back to you, David. Mine are all really short answers. I'm really sorry.
Well, I'm going to get an even shorter one here, Emma. So, will more assessment materials be released to support high control exam situations? So I think that question is, are there going to be more unseen assessment materials released? No, there won't be any further materials released for UK qualifications. However, for our international qualifications, there is the option of the unseen assessment materials that can be used, and they can be used according to the unseen assessment schedule. Over to you.
My next question is around kind of user experience with the materials that have recently been uploaded to the website. Some people are reporting seeing red lines when they download them across the documents. Firstly, apologies. That's certainly not something that we've built in as part of what we published. Some cases we might have watermarks across them that have maybe gone awry as you've downloaded them potentially. I think the one main thing to say here is if it means that you can't use those materials, please reach out to us. We'll get those materials over to you so that you can see them in a format that is readable. Back to you, David.
Thank you very much. Question number 13. How could we use these materials to take into account any COVID circumstances? So the JCQ guidance document that we've mentioned, that is a really key document to be familiar with, provides plenty of detail as to how you should consider the impacts of lost teaching and learning as you are determining grades for learners. This does include ensuring that grades are graded against the evidence produced for content that they've covered, not what they haven't. So it's really about, again, where there's flexibility built into the process. If things haven't been taught, then they don't have to be assessed. We are looking for evidential grades based on what learners have been taught this year. That isn't to say if, they have learned something extra, that you can't, not assess it. I think that was one of the questions that did come in earlier. They were saying perhaps where a student could display something. Absolutely, if you're confident and it could be used as part of the basket of evidence, then absolutely that can be taught. That could be included. But it's the system is designed to take into account the COVID circumstances and any lost impact of teaching and learning time. And these assessments are optional to be used in the best way to support your centre policy as well. Back to you.
Thank you. My next question is around sampling. What's it likely to be for these optional materials? So Ofqual announced last week that exam boards will be sampling across subjects within every centre, being sampled for English and for maths. And the sample will consist of evidence that was used to determine the students' grades. And this could include the optional materials if they were indeed used. Back to you, David.
Thank you very much. And I think this one has been touched on sort of already as well, just around grade boundaries. So the question is, how should we use historical grade boundaries? So I think I'll start on past papers. You can access the grade boundaries and sort of national performance statistics on our website. The attainment data document, which we're trying to get, I believe, the link sent out to everyone for, will just give some support as well as to how that could be used. But for past papers, all the grade boundaries and exemplification exists there, so you could use some of those historical grade boundaries. For the assessment materials, excuse me, they're groups of questions focused on individual and discrete areas of a specification. So they do vary in breadth and demand depending on the topic. Therefore, unlike the full past papers, there are no grade boundaries available for them. There's no requirement for the mark from an assessment to be converted into a grade, and the mark should be considered alongside the other pieces of evidence as part of the holistic judgment. But sort of any gaps in the range of evidence should be considered when you're selecting these materials as well. They might help to plug a gap of where some information is missing as well. But there are no grade boundaries for these additional assessment materials as well. Back to you, Emma.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry, David. I'll just butt in there here if that's okay. So I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Connor Pritchett. I'm the Assessment Customer First Manager. I've been answering a few of your questions through the session, and I was just letting David and Emma there go through some of the pre-submitted. But I'm just picking up on one or two sort of common questions that have been coming in, and some sort of quite niche ones that we've got, which I'll put to David and Emma. So firstly, we're getting a few questions around sort of other areas of this summer. So we're getting a few questions around please define what high level or low level control is, and is there a minimum amount of evidence that I need? Just to confirm, we do have a session directly on all these questions, and it was picked up by our head of assessment, Mark Howlett, in our live session on Friday. So that session was recorded and will be posted to our Pearson Professional Development Academy by this Thursday at the latest, and he does an absolutely great job and has been sort of our subject expert going through those topics and speaking about them at length and giving quite clear answers, which I think people will find helpful, hopefully. But specifically looking at this session, so we've got one or two questions coming in, and there was a good one that came in. I suppose it's looking more towards you, Emma. Is there, or what is the best way of creating a paper with the materials that Pearson has provided?
In terms of the topic test sets and groups of questions, Connor?
Yeah, so I suppose what's the best way to approach it? Sorry, go on.
That's okay. So the mapping grids are what define, how the assessment should be put together. So is it skills? Is it thematic? So depending on how that is for the subject that you're wishing to put together an assessment for, the mapping grids really are your first port of call. go in, see how the teams, so we've had the senior examining teams putting those together for us, and how they've suggested that you might put those tests together. And I think really it comes down to what you're trying to assess your candidates on. So it might be that there's a gap in evidence. So I think it's really about what skills you're looking to assess, which will determine how to put them together.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Emma. Another question that's come in is, can we use UK A-level grade descriptors for international A-levels or IAL?
So David touched on it in his one of his questions that he had. We are creating, and they should already be up, actually. They were published today, the grade descriptors for international. As David said, the basis of those came from the UK qualifications, but they have been tweaked, so it would be best to use the ones that have been created for international. And as I say, they are up. I don't know if it's possible, again, to put a link to those on here somewhere so that we can help those that are on the call.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll post a link out in a minute, just out to everyone. Another question is, so not all grades appear on the grade descriptors, and why is that?
So the process that we went through for creating the grade descriptors was a joint venture between ourselves and the other rewarding bodies and JCQ, and we agreed the different grades that we were going to exemplify and as part of this process. So if there are things that are missing, I think that is probably something that you want to be linking in directly with our subject advisors on, if there's support that's needed at this point in time. If there's anything that isn't highlighted as part of the grade descriptors, it's unlikely that we'll be going back and adding anything in. So I think the support will come from the subject advisors directly at Pearson, who can support with that.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Emma. And a bit of a niche question, but is there a subject overview doc for level 3 extended projects?
Yes, there should be. We did one for project.
Oh, brilliant.
Again, I can try to find the link now if that helps.
And so I've got one question as well. So it's quite a distinct situation, whereas I have 4 end of topic assessments done for IGC Business. These assessments are not based on exam pass papers. Are these acceptable?
Yeah, I can answer that one because I've literally just given an answer to it as well in the chat. I mean, absolutely. If you are creating assessments yourself, they can be used as part of the basket of evidence. I think there's nothing stopping people creating their own assessments. You may choose to create your own assessments from some of the materials that we're providing here as well. But I think it's important to stress that if you're creating those assessments, it is making sure that they map to the specific parts of the specification of Pearson specifications, and that if called upon, you could evidence against grade descriptors or the exemplification as to how that piece of or that assessment maps across to particular grade as well. So I think I've seen a couple of similar questions to that also sort of coming in saying, I've created my own assessment for something, or I've used part of your questions and part self-created questions to create some topic tests. Is this okay? Yes, I mean, it is okay. Just make sure that you, as I say, you're linking it to the grade descriptors, the grading exemplification. You could justify where that sort of grade has been derived from, and also make sure that there's a note about it in the centre policy as well. And I know you've probably got some brilliant questions that are also in there, Connor, and we'll do everything we can to get the last ones answered. Just conscious we've got sort of still a few of the pre-submitted that we just want to get through. So, Emma, I believe the next question was yours, just about tiered subjects.
Yes. So what should I do where I have a tiered subject was the question that was posted to us. So students should be entered for the correct tier for which they're expected to receive a grade. Tiered qualifications, we have the past assessments available to use, and the mapping grid should then indicate in which paper those questions have been used and act as a bit of a guide to help you there. Back to you, David.
Brilliant, thank you. And the next one is just similar to some of the things that we've mentioned already. Could you take 3 or 4 end of topic class tests and create an average mark? Would that count as one piece of evidence? And I think without knowing the full context and the full picture of what underpins this question, it's going to depend on the nature of the topic test. It's going to depend on the amount of content that is covered, and sort of any other forms of evidence that you were using to support the guidance. I think I'd be careful around how you're using any average mark and how it might be equated to a grade boundary, for instance. I'm not sure that that's something we would perhaps advocate. I think it's more about looking at the evidence that's coming from those topic tests. How does it map against the grading descriptors and the grading exemplification as well? Over to you, Emma.
So my next question is, do I have to use the additional assessment materials? So I think as part of my slide, I confirmed that you don't have to use these. They're not compulsory. It's an optional part of the basket of evidence, and you can choose to use these or other forms of assessment support for the grading of your students this year. So I mean, we've just touched on a few different ways that you might, come to the evidence that you need to drive that grade for your student.
Thanks, Emma. Next one, why is there no new content? So I think, it's something that we are fully appreciative of, but I think we're not in a normal examination series this year. So the purpose of these additional assessment materials is to support you in grading your students this year. And I think across awarding organisations, past paper content has particularly been used because of the support materials and the information about prior student performance, prior exemplification, being able to produce what we think are useful and helpful support materials to accompany them. So I think that's one of the big reasons behind why there are perhaps no new content pieces being released this year for some qualifications. Over to you, Emma.
Thanks, David. So my next question is one that I've heard quite a lot, and it is the question of why are the additional assessment materials being made publicly available? So all awarding organisations have been required to publish the questions that have been used in the additional assessment materials. But I think what is important to note here is that we have not published the mark schemes or any of those kind of useful supporting materials such as the examiner reports, or indeed anything that signposts to where the questions have come from. So whilst the questions have been used from 2019 and 2020 autumn series, the full versions of those question papers, as I said earlier, will remain under padlock on our website. So we've done all that we could not to signpost students to where those questions have been derived from.
Thanks, Emma. Last 2 questions. I think we're going to bring it in just on time on the hour. Next question is, what other forms of assessment would be acceptable as part of the basket of evidence? So there is a range of evidence that can be used to support grading, and it could include, we touched on it earlier in the presentation, it could be these optional questions provided by exam boards. It could be mock exams, it could be coursework and any other practical components, or non-examined assessment components that could be used, and then other work that is completed as part of a pupil's course study, perhaps essays or in-class tests. And as mentioned as well, that it could be that you use these optional materials in a way that is best suits your centre, and you've got that flexibility there as well. And Emma, last pre-submitted question for you.
Thank you. So the last pre-submitted question that I've got is around Exam Wizard and whether it is a free service. It is indeed free. You do need to have an Edexcel online account in order to access Exam Wizard. If you don't have an account already, you will need to reach out to your exams officer. But one thing just to say, I think as part of this, we've got the attainment data overarching document that was pulled together, and in there's a little bit of blurb about Exam Wizard, but also how to access it as well. So hopefully that would be helpful for people.
Thanks, Emma. Connor, I'm just going to throw back to you. Is there anything else that's been coming in on the Q&A section of things that is worth just sort of highlighting or pulling out before we draw it to a close?
Yeah, just one question I've just come across. So when you're using past papers for mock exams, where do we find the grade boundaries?
That's also all within the attainment data one pager that if we can pop it in here, that would be really helpful. There's a grade boundary page on our website, and that will link to it, so it will tell you how to access that.
Brilliant, thank you for that. I think that's it from their live questions.
Wonderful, thanks, Connor. And with sort of just a few moments to spare, it just leaves me to say a huge thank you to everyone who's attended. I hope it's been helpful, answered some of your questions. I do appreciate there are lots of questions around this summer still. If you have got extra questions, please do get in contact with us. We've got our subject advisors and subject specialists also available to help and support with some of the questions that you may have. And we've also got some of the subject sessions that are going on over the course of the coming weeks as well that I would implore you to sign up for as well. All of the recordings are going to be made available. They will be available on the website. So if you can't attend another session, you can access them via there. But just a huge thank you again from me. Thank you to Connor, and thank you to Emma for also helping to present and answer some of the questions today. And on that note, I will pass back to you, Emma.